As the world mourns Pope Francis, history's most secretive transfer of power begins. White smoke, the path to a new pope, guides you through this momentous transition. We explain exactly what happens next, leading to the dramatic conclave vote. Learn how each ritual unfolds, what each tradition means, and why these ancient ceremonies still matter today. Follow along as the throne of St. Peter stands empty and a new chapter in church history begins. White Smoke, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Calaroga Shark Media.
From Vatican City, where we're picking a new pope, and his name could be Donald, I guess. This is Ballot.
That's right, we're back in Italy as we pad out our expense reports once again. Let's hit this. The new economic crisis is apparently excessive Barbie ownership. President Trump just announced that his tariffs might mean children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls, which is the most unexpected attack on American childhood since someone decided participation trophies were destroying society. In a cabinet meeting that sounded more like a minimalist lifestyle podcast than national policy discussion, Trump suggested Chinese manufacturers were getting rich selling this stuff, much of it we don't need. This from a man whose apartment looks like Liberace, and King Midas had a decorating competition with no budget limit. Suddenly, the guy with solid gold toilet fixtures is telling American kids they have too many toys. Trump's newly appointed anti-doll seer, Stephen Miller, doubled down at a White House briefing, claiming most American parents would prefer fewer, more expensive dolls to cheaper Chinese ones that might have lead paint. Because nothing says making America great again like fewer toys on Christmas morning. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has been trying to roll back regulations on, wait for it, paint exposure for children. That's what we call playing both sides of the dollhouse. Democrats immediately pointed out the absurdity of America's most famous consumer telling everyone else to consume less. Senator Bernie Sanders said, Trump and Musk do not have a clue about what it means for a working-class family trying to buy presents for the kids. The irony is that this message comes right after Barbie made a massive retail comeback following that blockbuster movie 2 years ago. According to the Toy Association, more than 40% of U.S. toy companies expect to go out of business due to these new tariffs. Mattel declined to comment, probably because they were too busy designing Recession Barbie, who comes with just one outfit and a tiny cardboard sign that reads, "Will pose for food." Trump isn't the first president to preach austerity. Jimmy Carter famously gave his cardigan speech in 1977, encouraging Americans to keep thermostats at 65 degrees during an energy crisis. Carter was ridiculed by conservatives as patronizing and defeatist, but at least he practiced what he preached, turning off White House air conditioners until, according to Walter Mondale, it was 100 above in there. The papal conclave begins today. When asked last week who he'd like to see succeed the late Pope Francis, Trump answered with his trademark humility, "I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice." Now, even Trump isn't that crazy, and it was clearly a joke. But tell that to lackey and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who immediately jumped on the papal bandwagon, posting on X that he was excited about Trump's potential candidacy, calling him a dark horse candidate and asking Catholics to keep an open mind. Graham even wrote, "Watching for white smoke," though we all know Trump prefers his smoke coming from coal-fired power plants. Also, don't watch for white smoke. Listen to White Smoke, our sister podcast that's all about the papal succession. That's a real thing. White Smoke, wherever you get your podcast. Graham finished his post with Trump 2028, but used Roman numerals instead of American numerals. Trump isn't going to like that. The Constitution says you can only have 2 terms as president, but it's notably silent on whether you can simultaneously be leader of the free world and God's representative on earth. After his joke about becoming Pope, Trump admitted he has no preference about the papal conclave, but he did reveal some hometown bias, noting, "We have a cardinal who happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good." That would be New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan, who offered the invocation at Trump's second inauguration and led Pope Francis' funeral mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Nothing says separation of church and state like having your favorite cardinal on speed dial. Experts say the chances of an American pope are slim to none. As Dr. Bill Kavanaugh from DePaul University put it, there's no chance for an American pope just because the United States is already so powerful in the world. Pope Donald I would certainly bring some changes to the Vatican. The Swiss Guard uniforms would be replaced with MAGA hats, St. Peter's Square would be renamed Trump Square, and confession would involve signing an NDA. And just imagine the first papal encyclical titled The Art of the Divine Deal.
What happens when one of the most powerful men in music is accused of some of the most serious crimes imaginable? This is Did He Do It, a daily podcast following the federal sex crimes trial of Sean Diddy Combs. I'm your host, Nate Oliver, and every weekday I'll take you inside the courtroom where prosecutors say Combs ran a criminal enterprise of sex trafficking, coercion, and abuse, using his fame, fortune, and influence to silence victims and control lives. We'll cover the big stories and the small moments that could shift the verdict. The trial has begun. The questions are piling up. And every day we'll be asking the same thing. Did he do it? Follow now wherever you get your podcasts.
Tired of doom scrolling? Want news that won't make you want to live in a bunker? Check out 5 Good News Stories, where they find the silver lining in a world that's usually lined with something much less pleasant. The gang at 5 Good News Stories dig through the headlines to find 5 stories that prove humanity hasn't completely lost its mind. It's pretty much the opposite of this show. From scientific breakthroughs nobody's talking about to random acts of kindness that restore your faith in humanity, all delivered with the cutting wit you deserve. 5 Good News Stories, because sometimes the news doesn't have to suck. Subscribe to 5 Good News Stories wherever you get your podcasts. San Francisco welcomed its newest dystopian tech innovation this week as people lined up to have their eyeballs scanned by a white orb, because apparently Black Mirror episodes are now business plans. World, a digital identity system, opened 6 storefronts across America where you can now officially prove you're not a robot by acting exactly like a robot would expect a human to behave. Clement Anthonios, a 38-year-old telecommunications professional with apparently zero concerns about the future, eagerly stared into the orb Thursday to generate his proof of personhood. His beagle Tixie waited patiently beside him, probably thinking, "Thank God they're not scanning my eyes yet." The technology comes from Tools for Humanity, co-founded by Sam Altman. Yes, the same guy whose company, OpenAI, is creating all the AI agents we now apparently need to distinguish ourselves from. It's like selling both matches and fire extinguishers and calling yourself a public safety expert. At their launch party, attendees were treated to tuna poke bowls, s'mores with Ghirardelli chocolate, and frozen margaritas, because nothing says, "Please let us scan your irreplaceable biometric data," like free alcohol and sugar. San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie and California Governor Gavin Newsom were spotted at the festivities, but their offices insisted they didn't create world IDs. Politicians refusing to have their eyes scanned? That's the most trustworthy thing a politician has done in years. Altman told the crowd that 5 years ago he realized we needed some sort of way for identifying, authenticating humans. Look, if you want to prove you're not an AI, just write an actually funny joke for this podcast. I have plenty of data that proves AI is incapable of accomplishing such a feat. Okay, we're done here. Now go listen to the White Smoke podcast to keep up on the Pope stuff.